straighten them out if you don't. This is very important for believers to realize. In verse 10, take my brethren, the prophets who have spoken in the name of the Lord, for an example of suffering, of affliction, and of patience. James chapter 5 and verse 10. The prophets are an example to us. They suffered and they were patient. Verse 11, behold, we count them happy which endure. We have heard of the patience of Job and have seen the end of the Lord, that the Lord is very pitiful and of tender mercy. James chapter 5 and verse 11. Ye have heard of the patience of Job. That is about all I know about Job's patience. I've heard it. As I read the book of Job, I feel Job was very impatient. Actually, he learned patience. He was an impatient man, but he learned patience. And have seen the end of the Lord, that the Lord is very pitiful and of tender mercy. In other words, the Lord is full of pity or compassion and is merciful. You have to go to the end of Job's trial to see that he learned a great lesson and that the Lord was indeed compassionate and generous with him. Verse 12, but above all things, my brethren, swear not, neither by heaven, neither by earth, neither by any other oath. But let your yea be yea and your nay be nay, lest ye fall into condemnation. James chapter 5 and verse 14. That's in the Sermon on the Mount too as well. In other words, my friend, when you say you are going to promise something, you ought to be as if you were in a courtroom and had taken an oath and tell the truth. That's why I always say, Lord willing, the Greeks don't rise. We're going to cover that here in a minute. All your conversation ought to be like that. I cannot remember when my dad went to the bank one year to borrow money to get his cotton gin started. The banker was busy and said to my dad, "Go ahead and take the money." My dad said, "But I haven't signed the note." I never shall forget what the banker said. "If you say you will repay it, that is just as good as if you have signed a note. So come in later and sign up." May I say to you, a man's word ought to be just that good. Some people, even if they take an oath on a stack of Bibles, do not honor their words. This next section is entitled, "The Prayer of the Righteous is a Power." Verse 13. Is any among you afflicted? Let him pray. If uh, any uh, if any merry, let him sing psalms. James chapter 5 and verse 13. James says that the afflicted are to pray and the merry are to sing psalms. Sometimes a songwriter will get up in a service and say, "Now, everybody get us up and sit up and smile." I used to have a song leader like that in the church, and I pastored years ago. I told him, "Don't you know that in this congregation there are people who are really burdened?" As I look out there, I see one man who is a doctor and who has been busy all week taking care of patients. I also see a lady who is a buyer in a department store. She is weary and tired. And you ask them to sit up and smile? No, you don't have to sit up and smile. The afflicted are to pray. The merry are to sing psalms. Some people go to church and then try to work up some enthusiasm. We ought to have the great passion and the enthusiasm in our hearts even before we go to church, but we do not need to put on a false front. And that concludes